One of the things statistics does for us is describes population, tells us what a population looks like. Go with the example of heights again. When we talk about a person in America, how tall are they? There's no one answer to that. Everybody is a different height, but there is a range of heights that we would consider normal or typical or average. And that range we might refer to as the center of a distribution. We have some people that are much taller, some people that are much shorter, but the average of the population is somewhere in this range. We talk about incomes, we have the same thing. We have people who make less, people who make more, but your average American makes somewhere in this range. So we're talking about a measure of center, what is typical for that population. We got three of them we're going to talk about. There are others, and we'll be talking about a more sophisticated way of thinking about this later in the semester when we do something called a confidence interval. But for the moment, we're going to look at the mean, the median, and the mode for two reasons. They're easy to find, and they're easy to understand. So let's start with the mean. You already know what the mean is. The mean is just the average, what we call the arithmetic average. And to find the average, we just add them up and divide by how many there are. And that's what this means. We're going to have to learn some notation this semester. There's no way around it. So we're starting with a little bit of it here. This is a sigma. It's a capital sigma. It's a Greek letter for S. It stands for sum. Whenever you see this, you're adding stuff up. What are we adding up here? All of our x's. Each one of our numbers we refer to as an x. We're adding them all up. That's all that means. Add them up, divide by n. N is always going to refer to how many of the things there are. So you already know how to do an average. You add them up, you divide by how many there are. You can add these up in a calculator if you want. You should get 39. If you divide that by 9, there are 9 of them here. You should get about 4.33. Did not do that in my head. I did it in the calculator before I started. Okay, mean is the average. That's the easy one. Look, they're all easy, but that's the one you already know. The median is also easy. It's just the one in the middle. Strictly speaking, it's the one that half of them are above and half of them are below. But if we have an odd number like we have here, we have 9, we can count in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we've got this one in the middle here. That's our median. Half of the data is above it, half of the data is below it, so it's in the middle. Easy. The mode is the one that shows up the most often. And in this particular case of meaningless made-up numbers, that's going to be 3 because it shows up twice, which is more than the others. So the mode is the one that shows up most often. Right? Very simple. Let me make this, we're not going to talk about resistance here. Let me get rid of that. And let me change our data set just a little bit. Let me add another number to it. I'm going to leave all the numbers we've got. I'm going to add another 8. Now that's going to change all three of these. If we add up all of these numbers, we had 39 before, we're going to have 8 more than that, which is 47. Divide by how many there are now 10. That's going to be 4.7. No brainer. The median is the one in the middle. Now that we have 10 numbers, we can count in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there is no number in the middle. If there was a number in the middle, it would be right there. So we're going to find the number that's halfway between those numbers. Obviously, it's 4.5, but in general, to find the number halfway between, add them together, divide by 2. That'll give us 4.5. That is our median. Half of the numbers are above 4.5, half of the numbers are below. The mode is the one that shows up the most often. And of course, if you stop and think about this for a minute, you realize that there are 2 ways to go that make sense. You can either say there is no mode because there's no one that shows up the most often, or maybe we'll say both 3 and 8 are modes because they show up the most often. And the convention is that we do count them both. We would say both 3 and 8 are the modes. If you have data points, numbers that are tied for first, then yes, we have multiple modes. We would call this a bimodal distribution because it has 2 modes. If there's nothing that shows up most often, like if I got rid of a 3 and an 8, then we would say there's no mode there. We would not say all of them are tied for first. All right, next time we'll talk about measures of spread.